Hello, good evening and welcome to another evening of the Nations Cup. I'm Chris Kavaney, your host for the series, and we are now at round 4 of 15 here at the Sachsenring in Germany. But now things get pretty interesting. All the managers have been given their budgets, they've spent the money that they've got on their car. Some people have gone down a certain design philosophy route, some have gone down a completely different one. We'll see which one ends up being the better one today. We have 4 races this evening, and we have Division 2 up first as always. But before we go into all of that, we need to show the standings going into these races. And we can see that Felix Rosenqvist is on top for Sweden in 67 points. Pato Award only 8 behind. Filip Albuquerque in 3rd and 40 points. Robert Wickens, of course, in 4th. We've got Sasa Finistras, Felipe Nazar, Jamie McCup, all in close proximity of each other. Antonio Felix Acosta and Arthur Leclerc 8th and 9th. Raffaele Marcello in 10th. Kevin Magnussen in 11th. Sebastian Buemi 12th. We have Stefan Riquelme in 13th. And then when we look on the other side of the board, we have Christian Lundgaard on 24 points in 14th. Will Power with 19 points. Leonardo Fornavarelli in 16th. Marcus Harrison 17th. James Hinchcliffe in 18th. We have Kelvin van der Linde 19th. Nico Varone 9 points in 20th. Antonio Fuoco has been a bit lackluster, you could argue, in this series with Italy in 21st. We've got Bruno Senna in 22nd. Sheldon van der Linde in 23rd. Maher Vermeulen in 24th. Rafael Villegas was 25th. And then Negrein Carter-Kane last. So all of them on 0 points. And then we can see what the constructors looks like. And Sweden is on top with 83 points, 12 ahead of Portugal. Very impressive they've been so far. And we've got Mexico in 3rd place. Switzerland, despite some of the interesting races that they've been having, in 4th place. Very impressive. Monaco with a great outing last time out in 5th. Very, very close actually, this whole section, with Denmark, Australia, Canada, and then Argentina, even though they're in the points from the 40s, is still 9th place. It's a very close span, literally 4th and 9th, only 10 apart. It's very impressive. Then we have Brazil in 10th place, and Italy 11th, South Africa in 12th, and then India big up the rear with nothing. Right, with all of that out of the way, we can now show you what the grid looks like. We'll be showing the sprint first, naturally, and for the sprint, the top 10 is reversed. So, because of this, Marcus Ericsson starts on pole, Raffaele Marcello beside him, Kelvin van der Linde in 3rd, and then we've got Pato Award, Stefan Riquelme in 5th, Kevin Magnussen, Filip Albuquerque, Sebastian Buemi in 8th, Felix Rosenqvist in 9th, our championship leader, and then Robert Wickens in 10th. He has the pole position slot for the feature race, which is why he's there. James Hinchcliffe next to him in 11th place, Sheldon van der Linde in 12th. We've got both Australian cars 13th and 14th. Then we have Arthur Leclerc behind them, Christian Lundgaard in 16th, Nico Varone in 17th, Antonio Felix Acosta taking quite a BOP hit there and just not living up to what he should be doing, unlike Filip Albuquerque. And then we have Sasa Finistras in 19th, Leonardo Fornavarelli 20th, Felipe Nazar in 21st, Antonio Fuoco in 22nd, and then we have Rafael Villagomez in 23rd, Bruno Senna 24th, and then both the India cars, Maher Vermeulen and Negrein Carter-Kane in 25th and 26th respectively. So for the first race of today, I'm going to hand you over to Ryan Ferris for the sprint. Take it away.
And we're here for the first race of the League 2 sprint, and the lights are just about to come on here in Sachsenring. 5 lights are on, 5 lights are out, and it is Ericsson with a great getaway and Marcello tucking in behind Kevin van der Linde, who's up into 2nd. O'Ward's actually up into 2nd now, so that's a brilliant start from O'Ward as they come into turn 1, and that's Sebastian Buemi up into all sorts of issues. Oh, and what's going on here? We got a Team Italy car, a Brazil car, and Whincup all in the gravel at turn 1. And that's contact there from one of the Team Italia cars. Actually, it's both Australian cars in the gravel. So it looked like a bit of an accordion effect, and all of them came in together, and looks to be the Team Italy car is out, but both the Australian cars look to be okay. So Willpower is going to have to go through the pains of getting his way out of that gravel track, and it just was the Team Italy car going straight into the back of Whincup, but he was also collected a second time and punted into Whincup. So Fuoco is out. Confirmation there, so it's Fuoco who went into the back of wink up. So he's being trailered off. But back at the front, it's Marcus Ericsson from Pato O'Ward and Kelvin van der Linde. Raffaele Marcello with not the best of starts, losing 2 positions off the start there, demoted to 4th, with Stefan Ricalmi in 5th as they come down into the Sachs curve for the first time, and O'Ward's having a look up the inside of Ericsson, but at the same time he's now had to back off, and that's allowed Kelvin van der Linde to get up onto the back as there's more contact going on down the back end of the field there. That's Villa Gomez. Under pressure from one of the Argentina cars, and there was definitely contact there, and a rear wing missing for Villa Gomez, so he's going to have to peel into pit lane, and that is Nico Varone who has caused that incident, so there's going to be a potential penalty coming his way. Back at the front, 1 lap down. This is one of the shortest laps on the calendar, and a very technical circuit as well. Here is Kelvin van der Linde, who's glued to the back end of the Mexican of Pato O'Ward. And Kevin Magnussen looking for a move on Stefan Ricalmi. Not the easiest of places to pass, and that's now put Wickens onto the back of Magnussen, but Albuquerque's having a look at Wickens as well as they stream down to Sachs curve again, and O'Ward's going up the inside. Must have been contact made there. Well, Hinchcliffe also trying to make moves in the background, but messy stuff there from O'Ward, and this is really causing a bit of a train behind. So Stefan Ricalmi ends up taking the fastest lap of the race in 5th place. Fornarelli with electrical issues, so he's going to have to pit. And that's Arthur Leclerc going off with an issue. And funny enough, a very angry Will Power setting the fastest lap of the race as he tries to catch up onto the back of the field. So we have 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th all together on track. Here's Stefan Boemi trying to make his way through the field, so he's lost a few positions at the start, and that's Marcello losing his front wing. Raffaele Marcello makes a mistake and is hit by... who's that that's just gone into the back of him? Albuquerque, so Albuquerque's hit him as well. So Albuquerque, who's already taken the rear wing off of the Argentinian, is now taking the Swiss rear wing as well. As a move again from O'Ward into turn 1, but again not managing to get through on Ericsson. Ericsson continues to lead, but obviously with those incidents in the background with Marcello, it's now a group of 3 at the front. We go through on board with Felix Rosenqvist through the Omega curve, and then up around the swooping left-hander and back downhill again. This is a bit of a tyre killer, this circuit at times. This is Magnussen on the back of Stefan Ricalmi for 4th position. It seems like Ricalmi's definitely holding the pair up, with Robert Wickens behind Magnussen as well. Magnussen's having a look up the inside. Is he going to make this move stick? No, not quite, into the Sachs curve. So here is O'Ward back in the slipstream of Ericsson again. Is he close enough for a move into turn 1? No, not quite this time. Ericsson continues to lead, but in the background that's Bruno Senna, and actually that's Rosenqvist with an engine issue. So Rosenqvist, and that is on fire now, he's going to have to pull over. So Felix Rosenqvist, one of the favourites, now out of his sprint race. In the meantime, Fornarelli, who's recovering from that electrical issue, sets the fastest lap of the race. Here's Sebastian Buemi in 10th, and he's also lost his front wing. Made the exact same mistake as his teammate Marcello, and he is also going to have to trundle back to the pit lane. So, once again, what was looking like a promising day, although we're not finished yet, we've still got the feature race, but things not starting too well for Team Switzerland. Back of the front, it's still O'Ward pressuring Ericsson for that race lead. 5 laps completed. Marcello now sets the fastest lap, obviously recovering after a double wing change. And Kelvin van der Linde starting to drop off the back of these two now. Here's Magnussen having a look up the inside of Raikkonen, and there's Sheldon van der Linde with an issue. So he is coming to a stop just down the hill, as we see Felipe Nasser going up the inside of one of the Team India cars, which is Raghunathan. And it looks like Raghunathan's got a potential issue as well, has he? Although there seems to be quite a shuffle of positions in that top 15 there. But here is the South African coming to a standstill at the side of the course. And it is a transmission issue for him. But once again, back at the front, Marcus Ericsson looks as though he's pulled a little bit of a gap over Marcus Ericsson. It's now out to half a second. Van der Linde has rallied a little bit, but in the meantime, Magnussen's got through on Raikkonen. And we have a real gaggle of cars in the background. And it looks like Raikkonen's done the same thing as the two Swiss drivers, as ran wide and lost his front wing. So he's going to have to limp his way back to the pits for a front wing change. So that promotes Bruno Senna into the points, and potentially, the way we're looking at it, if more people lose their front wing, we might see Naren Karthikeyan in the points at this rate. Here is Kelvin van der Linde as we go on board with Lundqvist in 9th position. He's chasing onto the back of this Magnussen, Albuquerque, Wickens, DeCosta, Hinchcliffe battle. And they're all scrapping for 4th position. And it seems like Ericsson's gotten into his stride a little bit and is dropping O'Ward, but in the meantime, Kelvin van der Linde is now catching up onto the back of O'Ward. And we're on board with Verone. Now, what we didn't see was it looked like he was making a move on Felipe Nasser. Here's Albuquerque having a little bit of an issue, and he's actually managed to break away from Wickens. And Magnussen's managed to get away from him. Obviously, Albuquerque's got a few penalties looming over his head as a result of discrepancies already in this race. Here is Marcello, looking to be struggling through that Omega curve there. Currently running 17th as a result of other drivers falling foul to similar problems. But back at the front, O'Ward's now got just over a second over... Sorry, Ericsson's now got just over a second over O'Ward as Da Costa has a look at Wickens, and that's now opened the door for Hinchcliffe to have a move now. Lundgaard's also trying to look into the final corner. But Da Costa now under attack from the Canadian. If he can stay in front into turn 1, that should be him pretty much safe for most of the lap. And here is Narain Karthikeyan under pressure now from Jamie Whincup, who's obviously recovering from that incident from earlier. So the two Indian drivers down in 14th and 15th. O'Ward still under pressure from Kelvin van der Linde. And here's Hinchcliffe having a look up the inside of Da Costa again, and he's failed at that. And that's now allowed Lundgaard to have another look, but no. That would have been a plane crash of an instant if Lundgaard tried to go through with that. So through the Sats curve they go, and Lundgaard and his Raghunathan having a look at his teammate down into the Sats curve and not quite making it stick. That's now allowed Will Power onto the pair of them. And Marcello not far behind that either. So here is Power up the inside of Raghunathan, and he makes that stick for 15th position. Now here's van der Linde. Now, has he made a mistake? Because he's dropped quite a bit to O'Ward. Bruno Senna's saying something is broken with his car and he's grinding to a halt. So, bad news for Bruno Senna. He now relinquishes 10th position to his countryman Felipe and teammate Felipe Nasser. But that is quite dangerously coming to a stop there, with drivers having to take evasive action to avoid the Brazilian, and a few positions changed as a result of that. So Marcello's now got through on Karthikeyan. But this has been a race of attrition, really. We've had the upgrade window, so the opportunity for teams, as we see Rakalmi going up the inside of Karthikeyan now. But as I was saying, we've seen the opportunity for teams to apply upgrades to their cars, one of which being reliability, but some have fallen foul already in the early stages of this sprint race. With 11 laps completed, so just past half race distance. Here is Kelvin van der Linde, and that's Raffaele Marcello being pressured by Stefan Rakalmi. Felipe Nasser getting it all wrong through the Sachs curve there. And it won't be too long. Based on the laps that we still have remaining, there is a very fast charging Jamie Whincup coming through the field. Here's O'Ward in that second position. A fairly lonely second position it stands at the moment. He's 2.4 seconds behind Marcus Ericsson, who seems to have everything under control, with Kelvin van der Linde almost 2 seconds off the back of O'Ward. Magnussen struggling for grip at the top of the waterfall. Rounds to complete another lap, and that is 13 laps in the bag. Here is O'Ward, and there's another move. This is Rakalmi going through, or trying to go through, on Raghunathan. So Rakalmi's got through on Marcello somewhere, and in turn is now managing to trying his way through on the Indian driver, as he's slipstreaming him down the start-finish straight, he's going to pull out to the inside. And that's job done for the Monegasque driver. It is Felipe Nasser again, the sole remaining Brazilian driver with the final point in the bag, and he's being chased down by Verone and Winkup. Winkup still not managing to get past the Argentinian driver. Here, further back is Villagomez. He is under pressure from Fornarelli, and this is essentially the almost the battle for the final position, because Fenestrat is actually a little bit further behind these two. But Ericsson with a commanding lead here. Team just reiterating that he has got some solid pace, as we can see here, with a 2.7 second advantage. And this is one of those circuits really that half a second is almost like a second really, as we've already seen. You have to be very, very close to have an opportunity to pass. Kelvin van der Linde still staying within 2 seconds of Pato O'Ward, and this is the two Swiss drivers attempting to go through on Ragunathon. So this is Raffaele Marcello, I believe. Actually, no, that's Boemi trying his luck and trying his way through into the final corner, and definitely contact made there. And again, so one Swiss driver through, and it's a 10-second penalty there for Boemi for causing that collision. So his day goes from bad to worse. 15 laps completed in this 21-lap sprint race. Still Marcus Ericsson dominantly leading here in the Sachsenring. Although, must have made a mistake somewhere, as that gap has come down to 2.5 seconds. Either that or O'Ward is starting to pick up the pace in comparison. This is Will Power now under pressure from a recovering Riquelme. But Riquelme trying to get through at a point that generally you don't see an overtake, so it's usually better to hang back and go for where you know you can get the overtake done. Here's Marcello having another go at Ragunathon into the Sachs curve and still not managing to get through. Obviously being a little bit more patient than his teammate. But still 2.5 seconds between Ericsson and O'Ward. Van der Linde still staying within 2 seconds of O'Ward as well, so the general gap between the top three is starting to come down a little bit. Van der Linde still further up the road, and that's Riquelme trying the same move again that didn't work last lap, so I don't quite understand where he thought it was going to work this time round, but no contact made. They still carry on, but in the meantime Boemi's catching up onto the pair of them, obviously with that 10-second penalty, and that's another close move happening into the final corner. There's Kevin Magnussen in a lonely 4th position. You can see Calvin van der Linde just up the road, but just doesn't seem to have quite the pace to catch the South African. Felipe Albuquerque in 5th position, but obviously he's got a bunch of penalties over his head as well. And it is still Raffaele Marcello up against the Indian Defence League, it seems, that is Raghunathan. And he's going to have another go at the inside, but it doesn't work there. Karthikeyan's got a slow puncture, so he's not going to be getting involved in this incident. Is he going to manage to limp it back to the pit lane? I don't think so. And loses his front wing for good measure, so Karthikeyan pulls to one side with a corner left until he got to pit lane with a slow puncture, dealing his car even more damage, so I don't think the team will be particularly happy with that. But here's our leader coming back through to complete yet another lap. That will be 19 laps ticked off. And that's Will Power going off. So what has happened there? And that looks to be, is that a suspension failure that we can see just there? As he trundles down the hill very slowly. But out goes Will Power. Again, not the best. And it's a transmission failure, so another transmission failure in this sprint race. Whincup, who looks to have stalled out, is still stuck behind Verone, not managing to find a way through. Ericsson yo-yoing the gap between O'Ward. It's now up to 2.6 seconds, but it's still pretty much staying at 2.5 seconds. And Kelvin van der Linde not really letting O'Ward get away too much, with Magnussen trying to eke into the South African advantage as well. All it really requires is one of them to make a slight mistake and the fight for the podium will be ignited. Obviously we've seen quite a lot of drivers going wide in the second part, or the going into the final sector and losing the front wing. All it needs is a slight lapse of concentration, and what was going to be a fairly easy podium will be gone away in an instant. So, starting the final lap, Ericsson, O'Ward and van der Linde is your top three as it stands. But Ericsson has driven a superb race, controlled and managed the pressure from O'Ward in the early stages of the race, and just managed to drive away as he rounds into the final sector. Down the waterfall he comes into the Saxon curve for one final time. He's got one more corner to deal with after this, and it will be home and dry for Marcus Ericsson. And across the line he comes. Marcus Ericsson wins the League 2 sprint race. O'Ward finishing second, with Kelvin van der Linde finishing third. Magnussen is in fourth. Now Albuquerque will have to do some post-race totting up of the penalty to see where he actually finishes. I believe Wickens will be promoted to fifth. Here's that final battle for the final point. Nasser manages to hold on. Verone and Whincup actually closed in on the pair of them there. And Riquelme, obviously Buemi with that 10-second penalty from earlier. And Marcello across the line, Villa Gomez. All these drivers having issues in the earlier part of the race. and Fenestraz being the final car across the line in 19th. So here is confirmation of the final results. It is Marcus Ericsson who wins with Pato O'Ward second and Kelvin van der Linde in third. Kevin Magnussen finishes fourth with Robert Wickens in fifth. Felix da Costa in sixth. Hinchcliffe seventh. Lundgaard in eighth. For Felipe Nasser ninth. And Jamie Whincup gets the final points position actually, with Riquelme 11th, Buemi 12th, and it was the Indian driver of Raghunathan, who finished in 13th with Albuquerque with 2 lots of penalties over his head, demoted down to 14th, Marcello 15th, Villagomez 16th, Fornarelli 17th, Fenestraz 18th, and Verone 19th. Will Power was classified in the end in 20th, and then we come to the drivers that did not make it to the end officially, with Carthagena 21st, Senna 22nd, Sheldon van der Linde 23rd, Felix Rosenqvist 24th, Leclerc and Fuoco all failing to finish. And after what was a very attritional sprint race, it is back over to Chris.
So that's 6 different winners from 7 different races. Pretty impressive stuff, and pretty good going for Marcus Ericsson, considering he's been on a bit of a lower level compared to Felix Rosenqvist, his compatriot, who's been doing very well in this championship. So well done to him to get on that winning column. Antonio Fuoco better be careful though, because, well, if he does another stupid mistake, he might get a race ban going into the next race, which is Monaco, which, it being Monaco, you don't want to do. But anyway, now for the present, we can now look at Division 1. And much like we did earlier, we must go through what the standings are going into this weekend for them. And Philip Hansen's on top, only by 2 points to Scott Dixon in second place. Naoki Yamamoto, who's been having steadily consistent results, in third. Carl Larson, who's been, again, consistent and just not having many problems, in fourth. Alex Palou, very topsy-turvy, but in fifth. Sebastian Bourdais in sixth. Shane van Gisbergen in seventh. Joseph Newgarden in eighth. Stanley Stuvik in ninth. Jack Aitken in 10th. Daniel Yogadeo in 11th. And Nick de Vries in 12th, with Paul Di Resta in 13th. And then we could look at the other side, and Simon Pagenaud in 14th. René Rast and Andre Lotterer, both their home race here, sitting in 15th and 16th in the championship. They would want to have something different going for them now. And then you've got the 2 Ireland drivers of Alex Dunn and Max Hart in 17th and 18th. We have James Collado, who's been, well, away because of a race ban. He's now come back. And we have Alfred Evans and Ella Lloyd in 20th and 21st respectively. Tadasuke Makino in 22nd. Dries Van Toor 23rd. Larry Tavora in 24th. Mark Hoosens in 25th. Nathan Liwat and Avaragal in 26th. And then we have Alex Lynn and Vanina X on 0 points. But both of them aren't currently driving at the minute, so I can't see that changing for a while. And then we can see what the constructors looks like, or the nations rather, for this. And we have New Zealand on top on 86 points, only 15 ahead of the USA, who's been very consistent. I don't think they've had a race win yet, and they're up here, which is fantastic. And then we have England in third place on 69 points, Spain very close on 67, France on 60, Scotland on 54 points, Japan on 51. Again, all very, very close in this area. A good weekend for any country would do wonders. And then we have Germany on 43, Thailand on 30, Netherlands also on 30, Ireland on 27 points, Wales on 15, and Belgium on 6. But before we get into the race, there have been a few driver changes at Division 1. There have actually been none in Division 2, surprisingly, but in Division 1 has been a couple, actually more than a couple. We can, as I mentioned earlier, James Collado has come back in to the number 25 car, Alex Lynn's gone back to the reserve role, and then we have at Team Netherlands, Sam Hall has decided to take out Larry ten Voorde. You can argue he's had somewhat of a disappointing start to the season. So now Robin Freins has taken that chair. And then at Team Japan, Kieran McGinley has decided to take out Tadasuke Makino and brought in the legend that is Kamui Kobayashi, Le Mans winner and all sorts. And at Team Belgium, Mark Hoosens has now stepped away from the car, and Stoffel van Dorn now returns after, we've seen him quite a lot in the Grand Prix World Series. He is now going to make his appearance in the Nations Cup. So with all those drivers changes, how does that make the grid look? Well, for the sprint it's made it quite interesting because, well, as we can see, Max Hart is on pole now for the sprint with Sandy Stuvik right next to him, James Collado returning back in third, and Stoffel Vandoorne straight out the gate is going to be starting 4th place in the sprint. Very, very impressive already, making his statement for himself. Philip Hansen in 5th, and we have Andre Lotterer in 6th, René Rast in 7th, they'll want to get some nice points. Sebastian Bourdais in 8th, Simon Pagenaud in 9th, and you've got Alex Dunn in 10th. Daniel Juncker, who actually would be starting in 6th, is starting in 11th because of a 5-place grid penalty that's been carried over from Valencia. And then we have Joseph Newgarden in 12th, Dries van Tol in 13th, and we have Alex Palou 14th, Naoki Yamamoto in 15th, Carl Larson 16th. Then we have New Zealand, who have been somewhat struggling because of their BOP hit in 17th and 18th, and we have Kamui Kobayashi starting in 19th, a bit rocky, but we'll see how the race goes for him. And then we have Robin Freins in 20th, and Paul de Rest in 21st, Nick de Vries in 22nd, Elfyn Ems 23rd, Jack Aitken in 24th, and then Natalie Leeward-Varagel and Ella Lloyd on the back row. But once again, it's race time for the Division 1 sprint. Ryan, take it from here, man.
So here for the Division 1 sprint race here in Sachsenring, the 5 lights are about to come on, and when they're extinguished it is going to be go in Sachsenring. It's a great start from Hart, and Stuvik's getting an even better start on the second getaway, and into the lead goes Stuvik. So Sandy Stuvik takes the lead into turn 1 from Max Hart and a returning James Collado in 3rd position. Through Omega Curve for the first time. And up through the twisting hill section, back downhill, and it's all pretty much tightly compact. No instance this time round like in the Division 2 sprint race, and it looks like Bourdais managed to do a cracker of a move up into 4th position on Stoffel Vandoorne. Here is Collado over the back of Hart. He's trying to go around the outside of Hart into the Sats curve, and Hart's trying to get up the inside of Stuvik. This is looking like it is going to be a barnstormer of a sprint race already. So Bourdais through on Vandoorne, and he is going to set about catching up onto the back of Collado. Actually, Bourdais having an absolute stormer of a start, actually, having started in 8th position. So down the hill they go. Pagenaud up 1 position as well. As we did see coming out of the Sachs curve, there was some shufflings going on in the background, but still at the front it's Sandy Stuvik as Stoffel Vandoorne under pressure once more from Andre Lotterer. And Lotterer has now opened the door now for Hansen. So down they come again, as it's Max Hart still on the back end of Stuvik, and it seems like Stuvik's managed to get a little bit of a getaway. Few car lengths given out as Yamamoto goes up the inside of Dunn for 11th position. Across the line we go, a few fastest laps appearing, and it is Stoffel Vandoorne who takes first blood on the fastest lap, as Yamamoto manages to squeeze his way up into 10th position now on Van Thor. But here is Hart now under pressure from Collado into turn 1, and there's contact made, and Collado shoves Hart into the gravel. Hart's now lost his front wing, and Collado, who's just come back from a race ban, already blotting his copybook. So Hart, who's got to go all the way round with no front wing, who's going to be holding up the whole field. That's allowed Stuvik to get away. I think the driver's definitely not going to be happy with the fact that, although it's not Hart's fault, they've all been very much hampered by the slow Irish driver, and there's a lot of a massive backlog of drivers trying to make look at the train coming down the waterfall there, all bunched up behind Hart, who's nearly back to pit lane. Oh, and there's a car off in the background, and spinning is Robin Frein. So what happened there? So here's Freins behind Jack Aitken. He goes to have a look at the inside, but thinks better of it. He just runs wide, it seems, and runs out of space. Off the gravel he goes, and around he goes as well. So did not look like any sort of outside assistance there, and he looks to be okay to carry on. But he's dirtied his tyres there, and he's pretty much destroyed any chances of scoring points in this race, at least. Back at the front with James Gallardo. Didn't see any confirmation, although there was quite a lot going on at the time, but I didn't see any confirmation of any sort of penalties for Gallardo. But they may have actually just popped up on the screen and I missed them. But here is Dries van Thor, 9th position for him at the moment. He's chasing down Danny Junkadea. And the grid has really been sort of spaced out as a result of the Max Hart incident. Bourdais in the meantime catching up onto the back end of James Gallardo. And here is Sebastian Bourdais on board into turn 1 to go back downhill into the Omega curve. Here is Joseph Newgarden under pressure from Shane van Gisbergen. Here's Dixon further up the field. Dixon not having the best of times here in the Nations Cup. He's seen quite a lot of success in the Grand Prix World Series. It just doesn't seem to be quite going his way. Car not going the way he would like it to go. Who is this? I think this is looking back at Alex. No, was Pallot's gone from Ras, so that's got to be Lotter on the back of Van Thor, I think it was. But down at the back of the field, we're looking at the two Team Wales cars. Oh, Lloyd and Evans. They're not having the best of times at the moment. They did show some promise earlier on in the season, but recent races they've been struggling a little bit. Here is James Gallardo, 2nd position at the moment, trying to hunt down Stubik. Now Stubik has had this in early races where he's disappeared off up the road, but not quite had the pace to hang on. And we've also seen decent pace from Bourdais. Obviously Bourdais starting on the front row later on for the feature race. Here is Simon Pagenaud, Bourdais' teammate, who's on the back end of this long gaggle of cars. I believe this is Van Dorn all the way back to Pagenaud in 7th position, so this is the battle for 4th position. Van Dorn making a welcome return to the Grand Prix World Series paddock in Nations Cup. Very popular driver out in the in Grand Prix World Series. He's seen some success out there, and people were scratching their heads that Belgium didn't turn to him in the off. But definitely bringing Team Belgium up to the front end of the field now. And the radio message from Van Gisbergen, he's got no brakes. So, and he's off. So, brake failure for Van Gisbergen. And this is not one of the circuits you want to have a brake failure at. As you can see, not masses of runoff. MotoGP who've raced here recently, a few weeks ago, and even those guys are starting to feel that they've outgrown the circuit, so definitely not the biggest of circuits for the Grand Prix cars. This is Stuvik, who's still holding on that 1.5 second advantage over Collado, and Bourdais closed in a bit more on Collado for that second position. And here he is now looking back in the battle for the final points paying position. This is Alex Dunn ahead of Palou. Palou, who has been dominant this season in IndyCar, and he was hoping that he'd bring some of that dominance to the Nations Cup, but seems, once again, a bit like we've seen with Dixon, not quite having the pace in that Team Spain car that we'd expect him to see. And here we go now. This is Bourdais all over the back of Collado now for second position. Now, if Bourdais can dispatch of Collado as soon as possible, he most certainly has the pace to go off to search Stuvik. Down the hill they come. And confirmation there that I did miss that Collado has got a time penalty as the team relayed to Bourdais, but I don't think that particularly matters for Bourdais because he still needs to get past him. And he's going up the inside now into the Sax curve. Collado not giving way though. Now, if Collado was a thinking man, actually, he wouldn't defend this position because it's actually losing him time. And as long as he's losing time, that's potentially positions he's losing, with the penalty lingering over his head. Here's Liwat of Renagu coming through, trying to get past Paul Di Resta, I think that is. Actually, no, it's not Di Resta, it's Aitken. So they've managed to come through on the Team Wales cars, and now pressuring up the front. It is still Bourdais all over the back of Collado, but here is Kobayashi, and it seems Japan struggling a bit here in Sachsenring in Germany. We expect to see him a little bit further up, but for one reason or another, whether or not they've gone down the wrong direction for the upgrades or they just went for the wrong setup choice, not quite at the races this weekend it seems. Although early to write them off, there still is a feature race later on as we look back for this battle. Now for 5th position, as it seems like Van Dorn has had a bit of a regroup and has managed to go off up the road in his 4th position. Van Dorn obviously still getting used to the Nations Cup car, which is a little bit different to what he's used to in Grand Prix World Series, but he seems to be adjusting to it quite well. But here's Stuvik, who's managed to open the gap up to Collado to 2.1 seconds as a result of the pair of Collado and Bourdais squabbling for position, but Bourdais actually dropped a second on Collado, so I don't know what happened there. But hopefully he can regroup soon as we are passing the halfway point in this sprint race. It is the recovering Freins after his spin in the gravel trap earlier, out of the second to last corner. Here is Bourdais. Right, we move back to Freins, who's going to have a look down into the Saxker. Still not managing to get through on Ella Lloyd. In the meantime, just up ahead, we've got Evans trying to get through on Liwat and Navaragu. is Collado once again being hunted down by Bourdais. Bourdais gradually closing that gap back up. Obviously we didn't quite see what happened, what caused him to go a second down on Collado, because he was pretty much glued to the gearbox of the Britain's car. Obviously actually Team England car. And all the while, Stuvik 2 seconds up the road. Bourdais managing to close just that little bit more. It's down to half a second between Collado and Bourdais, and once again Bourdais having to press Collado to get through. Here's recovering Max Hart after earlier. He's managed to catch up onto the back of the field now and is on the back end of Robin Friends, who has managed to drop off the back of Ella Lloyd, so something's gone on there. Here is Stoffel van Dorn in what is now a lonely 4th position, but just up ahead we saw Bourdais having another look at Collado. I don't know if Collado's managed to go through. In fact, Bourdais has gone into the back of Collado and he's lost his rear wing. So that is going to be a penalty coming the way of Bourdais in his frustration. We saw an instance similar to that in the Division 2 race, and that's a 30-second penalty and a 10th place penalty for Bourdais. Collado filters out in 18th position. Collado already with a time penalty. I think Hart will be saying that that's a bit of karma coming his way. But meanwhile, the squabble continues between Van Dorn and Lotterer, because Lotterer has managed to close that gap onto the back of Van Dorn, which is now the battle for 3rd position. Which is actually, coming to think of it, now with Bourdais with a 30-second penalty, it's the battle for 2nd position now. So, both of them at the moment on the podium, or a net podium as it stands, but I can't see Bourdais disappearing 30 seconds up the road. Stuvik comfortably in that 1st place. Essentially, with Bourdais out of the mix, he's got a 5-second advantage to Van Dorn. Meanwhile, you've got Lee Watanabe down in 21st. But still, just about hanging on to the back of the Team Scotland cars. Again, Team Scotland, who were very promising out the gates in Silverstone, have gradually petered out as the season's gone on. I know we've only just come to our 1st upgrade window, as Rast has a look up the inside of Dunn for the final points paying position. Here is Stuvik, still with a very commanding lead. Here's De Resta trying up the inside of his teammate Aitken, as Collado again suffering with some sort of issue, so he's had to pull into pit lane one more time. And the way things are going, he's potentially going to find himself getting lapped. But here is Simon Pagenaud having a look up the inside of Hansen for 5th position. And although Bourdais managed it on the 1st lap through there, you don't really see anyone else doing the move through there. And Dixon having a look up the inside of Rast this time. And there's smoke billowing out the background, and that's Yamamoto. So engine failure there, or water leak there for Yamamoto. And what has already started to be a tough weekend for Japan continues to be even tougher for the Japanese team. Here is Stuvik, almost 2 seconds ahead of Bourdais. So Bourdais is actually catching, but for Stuvik's sake, we hope that he doesn't catch us. Still Yamamoto failing to retire actually and getting in the way of everyone there. Pagenaud again trying up the inside of Hansen into the Sachs curve, but again failing to do so. And all the while, this is allowing Juncker to catch up onto the pair of them. Bourdais still closing that gap down to Stuvik. And it seems Yamamoto has gone nearly a full lap and has only just realised that the engine is smoking. So you'd have thought the lack of power would have been the first idea that the engine was failing, but apparently not. And he pulls to a halt at the final corner. So second retirement. Not been the attritional race in League 1 like we saw in League 2. Here is Lotterer once again trying to find a way through on Stoffel van Dorn. And what an amazing debut this has been for the Belgian driver. Still holding on as up the inside he tries to go, and there's contact. Andre Lotterer has made contact with Stoffel van Dorn in the closing stages of this race and has taken the wheel off of the Belgian driver's car, so he is out of the race. And what was going to be a fairy tale debut for the Belgian team, with a potential second place on the cards for Van Dorn, has turned into disappointment, and he will be furious with Andre Lotterer. Lotterer for sure will have a disqualification to his name. But he still carries on. And there is the confirmation. It is 6 penalty points and a disqualification for Andre Lotterer, which will promote Hansen and Pagenaud to the podium positions as it stands. With 3 laps remaining. But Stuvik leading, but has now got Bourdais for company, and for Stuvik's sake, he's going to hope that he can try and stay as far away from the French driver as possible. He quite likes his rear wing intact. Still, Bourdais trying as hard as he can to eke out as much advantage to the rest of the drivers behind, but even still, with a 30-second penalty over his head, from what I remember, he's still going to drop outside the top 15. So Bourdais well in the slipstream now, Stuvik, and within passing distance really to the Thai driver as they come round to complete yet another lap when they come to start the final lap this time round. So, last lap time, it's still Stuvik leading. Bourdais, who has a penalty to his name, is second on the road, and essentially, although it goes against all mentality of a race driver, you almost want to let Bourdais through if you're Stuvik and just let him go, and you will still take this win. But that's not in the mentality of a race driver, so Stuvik has got to hope that Bourdais doesn't do anything silly on this final lap, and he will be race winner. So they come down the waterfall into the final corner. They go. Bourdais had a look, but luckily for Stuvik, Bourdais goes out wide, and round the final corner comes Sandy Stuvik to win the sprint race for Division 1. Bourdais crosses the line, and so does Lotterer, but obviously that's not going to be their final positions. Hansen and Pagenaud take second and third position, and Juncker managing to get Vanthor just across the line. As the drivers continue to cross the line, as we wait for Evans. So Evans has had an issue somewhere that we didn't pick up on, but he comes out the final corner and is last to cross the finishing line. But there is your race winner. Sandy Stuvik wins here in the sprint race in the Sachsenring. Philip Hansen is promoted to second with Pagenaud in third. Danny Juncker up to fourth with Vanthor in fifth and Palou sixth. Alex Dunn takes seventh place with René Rast in eighth, Scott Dixon ninth, and Joseph Newgarden rounding out the points. Nick de Vries finishes 11th in the end with Kamui Kobayashi in 12th and Carl Larsen in 13th. Sebastian Bourdais, after his penalty, was demoted down to 14th position with Paul de Resta in 15th, Jack Aitken 16th, Lee Watanabe in 17th, and Ella Lloyd in 18th. Roman Freins, after that spin on the early laps, goes down into 19th, with Max Hart, a very frustrating 20th position for him. Elvin Evans, the final driver to finish across the line, was 21st, and Collado and Van Dorn are classified. Collado with a penalty anyway. Yamamoto in 24th, Van Gisberg in 25th, and Lotterer with the disqualification. And after that dramatic Division 1 sprint, it is once again back to Chris.
So after flicking through some Retro Racing Managers League archive, I believe that is Jake Sanson's first win as a manager. So congratulations to him. Sandy Stuvik drove amazingly. I mean, it's been some time coming because he's had some pretty good races. But yeah, well done. And much like Antonio Fuoco in Division 2, André Lotto has to look after himself now. He's on 10 penalty points that's been put on his licence. Another issue, and he may well have to sit out a race sometime in the future. But we still have 2 races to go today, and one of them being the Division 2 feature now, which we can show you now. Because there have been some penalties in the sprint, some of the order has been changed, so we can just go through it now. That Robert Wickens is on pole for that still, Felix Rosenquist in second place, Sebastian Buemi in third, and then we have Kevin Magnussen in fourth, Safari Kelmy in fifth, Paolo Ward in sixth, Kelvin Magdalena in seventh, Raffaele Macchio in eighth, Marcus Emerson in ninth, James Hinchcliffe in 10th, Sheldon Van Der in 11th, both the Australian cars in 12th and 13th place respectively. Philippe Albuquerque, who's taken that fall on the penalties, down to 14th, Arthur Leclerc in 15th, Christian Lundgaard into 16th place, Antonio Phoenix Acosta in 17th, Sasa Fenestraz in 18th, we have Leonardo Fornaroli in 19th, Felipe Nasr in 20th, Rafael Gomez in 21st, Bruno Senna in 22nd, 22nd, Matt Vivigan in 23rd, Darren Carter-Kane 24th, Antonio Fuoco and Nico Ferroni, because of their penalties in the sprint, now are at the back of the grid. With all that now, it's feature race time. Ryan, back to you.
We're back again here in the Sachsenring for what is now the Division 2 feature race. And what are we going to see here today with Robert Wickens on pole? The lights come on and the lights go out. Wickens gets a good getaway, but who's going to have an even better one? And is free wide almost into turn 1. It is Sebastian Buemi who's managed to get his way up into second position. There's a few shenanigans going on in the background, as it looks to be somehow and somewhere Matvei Ragunathan has lost his front wing. So who has he made contact with? Oh, and he's lost his rear wing as well. So Fuoco's just gone into the back of Ragunathan. Although I feel like... So here is Ragunathan. He's going into the back end. And really don't know what Fuoco was doing there. He's essentially clattered into two of them. So Ragunathan's going to have to make a long journey back to the pit lane. It looked like one of the Argentina cars. No, he's gone into the back of the Mexican driver. So he's going to have to make a long journey back to the pit lane with no front or rear wing. Ragunathan asking if he needs to pit, and well, unless this is the Formula Ford Championship, which I don't remember it being, I think he needs to pit. Fuoco has been given another penalty for that incident, but meanwhile it is Robert Wickens who is sprinting away out front with Sebastian Buemi in second position. Now hopefully Buemi is going to have a better showing than he did in the previous race. He really blotted his copybook in that one. And Rosenqvist is going to look to try and reclaim his championship lead over Pato O'Ward after that DNF earlier, which allowed O'Ward to take the championship lead. Here's Ericsson, the sprint race winner, making his way through up into 6th position. But Wickens now with just over a second to Buemi. Buemi with just over a second to Rosenqvist. Ragunathan's finally managed to make it back to pit lane. But here is Arthur Leclerc under pressure now from Jamie Whincup. And there is Will Power under pressure from Selwyn van der Linde further up for 10th position. And Power actually ducks out to go up the inside of Kelvin van der Linde. Now, does he make that stick? No, he does not. And they're free abreast there actually, and there's contact in the background. So here we are on board again. We'll have a little bit more light shedded on this as Whincup goes up the inside of Leclerc. Looks to make the... No, he doesn't make it stick. It looks like he shoved him off. And who is that that's gone into the back of him? I think that was Lundgaard who's gone into the back of Leclerc there. So on board with Lundgaard, you see just ahead Whincup going up the inside. Is there any... No, he doesn't force Leclerc off, and Leclerc just goes off the track, and Lundgaard just didn't really have anywhere to go there. So Lundgaard loses his front wing. No further investigation, as that was pretty much a racing incident. But in the meantime, Buemi's managed to close that second in on Wickens, and Wickens is now under pressure for that race lead. Buemi, who has shown all season that he has got good race pace, as we look to Rosenquist, who is under pressure now from, I think that is Raquelme. We appear to have a slight issue with the timing tower that we're looking at the bottom end of the field, and that's a front wing damage there for Felipe Albuquerque. So he's going to have to limp his way back to pit lane. There's Felipe Nasser going up the inside this time round. Back at the front. And we've got the timing tower back, and it confirms that it is Wickens. And we don't really need to see that he's 0.2 behind, but there is Boemi all over the back end of Wickens. Rosenquist, a fairly distant third position, but is under pressure from Stefan Raquelme. Here is Antonio Felix da Costa, who is a little further down the back end of the field, and it looks like a mistake there from Raquelme. I think Raquelme tried to do one of the moves that everyone's been trying all weekend, and so far only Bourdais has managed to pull off, which has cost him time. His willpower up the inside of Magnussen. And in the meantime, Ericsson's managed to get up the inside of O'Ward. Here is Raffaele Marcello going up into 6th position. So has O'Ward got an issue here, because he's gone down 2 positions now. He carries on, he hasn't pitted. O'Ward coming back at Marcello now into turn 1. But thinks better of it and backs out of it. Rosenquist has had a little bit of a regroup. Looks like Boemi's attempted a move somewhere and it's not worked, so the gap is now out to 1.4 seconds. All the while, it looks like Rosenquist is just looking after his tyres a bit there. Here is Willpower, still trying to find a way from Magnussen. Obviously, having tried to make a move already past Magnussen, he has now got Fornarelli all over the back of him, trying to make a move on Power, and Power's really actually holding up this group here. Back at the front, Boemi managing to take half a second back on Wickens. Here's Kelvin van der Linde under pressure now from Jamie Whincup, and Whincup goes through on Kelvin van der Linde. Seems Boemi is fairly comfortable with Wickens, providing that he can continue to shadow him. Further back, this is Arthur Leclerc, who has got James Hinchcliffe for company. This is the battle for 14th and 15th. They come down the waterfall into the Sachs curve, and he's just far enough ahead for no real challenge from the Canadian. Boemi still continuing to close in on Wickens. All the while, Rosenquist, who at the moment looks as though he's going to retain his championship lead, is hanging on there in third position. Further back, 9th and 10th, the two Australian drivers glued together for position, with Fornarelli for company as well. Seems like Power's not managing to close back up to Magnussen the way he did earlier, and here's a move coming up for Boemi into the Sachs curve. Is he going to manage to pull this off? No, not quite. Wasn't quite close enough. Down the hill. And this is in the background, you've got Magnussen trying to pull moves, as well as Power, or Whincup on Power. O'Ward really struggling in these early stages. I'm assuming he's running a heavier fuel load, to the rest of the field, and he's going to be going long into this first stint, which could really help him into the second stint, as it is quite an early pit window by the looks of things from what I'm being told. So here's Buemi, and all the while Buemi has managed to get through, so we missed that, but Buemi's gone through on Wickens. It looks like, by the looks of where they are, it was a turn 1 overtake, so Buemi's taken the lead. But with Buemi's luck, will he keep that lead? Meanwhile, further back, this is Da Costa, I believe. Actually, no, this is Albuquerque ahead of Fenestraz. Battling down the rear end of the field, obviously Lundgaard, Albuquerque, Fenestraz and Ragunathan all having issues. Here is Fuoco on the back of the field. Obviously he's got a penalty looming over the head of him. Raquelme's now closed in on Rosenqvist. So where Rosenqvist was going about his business, looking after his tyres, he's now got a very fast monogas driver on the rear end of him. On board. Power still holding on to that position ahead of Whincup, but they've actually managed to close onto the back of Magnussen now. Here's Da Costa having all sorts of issues going through the Sachs curve as they come through the final corner one more time to complete 9 laps. Currently, it is Sebastian Buemi with the fastest lap of the race, so he's, as a result of him being released by Robert Wickens, he's now free to go off up the road, and with the pace that he's going at, suggests that he's running a lighter fuel load, so he'll be amongst the first to pit. Rosenqvist, I believe, running a little bit heavier, which is why he's got Raquelme all over the back of him. Massive pace difference between the pair of them, and Raquelme's going to try and pop out up the inside here. Is he far enough along? No. Rosenqvist holds on to that position, and Raquelme really has messed himself up with that failed attempt for third position there. And he's almost back into the clutches of the Ericsson-Marcello battle. But Buemi still happy up front as Jamie Whincup goes up the inside of Magnussen, so that's another position lost for Magnussen. Powers got through on O'Ward, so O'Ward's lost yet another position. O'Ward's going to be hoping that the tyre differential, if he is going long, is going to be good enough to allow him back through the people who have passed him at the moment, but it's not looking great for the Mexican, who will look like he's taken a brief lead in this championship, as long as Rosenqvist stays where he is. And that's a slow moving car, it's Ericsson. For a moment then I thought that was Rosenqvist that was retiring off the side of the road. But still, for Team Switzerland, no, for Team Sweden, sorry, it's a retirement nonetheless, and it is our race winner in the sprint race earlier, Marcus Ericsson, to become our first retirement in this feature race. It's been actually quite 11 laps completed and only our first retirement, compared to the first race that we had earlier, where we probably already had about 4 cars out by now. It Here's Wickens being chased down by Rosenquist, who is in turn being chased down by Riquelme, who's recovering from that mistake he made a couple laps ago. This is Van der Linde under pressure from Leclerc, and again Leclerc making the wrong opportunity to make a move, and he's put himself under pressure from James Hinchcliffe now. So Hinchcliffe pops out up the inside. Leclerc gives him room, but still manages to round the outside and keep hold of that 12th position. Here's Wickens in 2nd position, losing a lot of time to Buemi. 3 seconds is the gap for the Swiss driver to the Canadian. Here's Felipe Nasser now under pressure. And up the inside, no, not quite. So Nasser continues to keep hold of that final points paying position in 15th. A reminder that unlike the sprint race where it's the top 10 that score, it's the top 15 that score here in the feature race. Van der Linde attempting a move on O'Ward, that's allowed Magnussen onto the back of him now, and also his brother Sheldon. Here's a recovering Felipe Albuquerque, so he's been running some pretty quick lap times, obviously new front wing, not a massive tyre advantage obviously because it was early doors when he pitted. In the background it's Fornarelli going up the inside of Fenestraz. There's Buemi continuing to eke out that advantage to Wickens. It's now opened up to almost 4 seconds now. There's Villa Gomez having a few issues going through the Omega curve. He's trying to catch one of the Italian cars up ahead, which I think that is actually Fuoco. Obviously Fuoco with the penalty to his name. Here's Rosenquist still under pressure from Riquelme, so Riquelme's managed to bring that gap back. There's actually Marcello in the background as well as we look to Fuoco trying to make another move on Nasser, but Nasser still doesn't relinquish that position. Down the back straight. Back to Buemi. With a commanding lead, but he did show to us earlier running wide through this corner actually and losing the front wing. Buemi has failed to finish on the podium or even win in situations where some have not been his fault. He's had a few reliability issues, Silverstone and Valencia to name a pair of them, but on other occasions it's also come down to fault of his own, as we see almost synchronised passing into the Omega curve. Kelvin van der Linde trying to pass O'Ward whilst Sheldon van der Linde almost being passed by Magnussen. But still proving to be a tricky move here in Sachsenring. Only 2 real overtaking opportunities, which is the Sachs curve and the first corner. But Buemi still out in front, but further back Rosenquist still under pressure from Riquelme. So Riquelme's trying to make a move there, but we all know that's not going to work. So all that work that Riquelme's made and done to catch up what was already a deficit that he'd created himself, he's got to do it all over again. And he's falling into the clutches of Raffaele Marcello as well. But Wickens, all on his own, as we look to Calvin van der Linde, who's going up the inside of Pato O'Ward, but O'Ward doesn't let him through, and Alpha Leclerc's just been barged out the way from Hinchcliffe, and he's lost his rear wing. So what happened here? Hinchcliffe goes up the inside. He's almost all the way, but not close enough. Obviously, closes the door. Riquelme's pitting, so Riquelme first to pit. Buemi still carries on. Luckily for Leclerc, who's not going to be happy about that, he is having to pit at the start of the pit window. Probably not ideal for him, as he was expecting to go long. But hopefully the Monegasque team can change the strategy and it's not completely race over for the Monegasque driver. Rosenqvist, in the meantime, now all alone, but he's almost got Marcello for company in the background. Has a bit of breathing space now, but is he going to find himself undercut by Riquelme? Riquelme's potentially fed his way into traffic by pitting so early. Here's Whincup trying to make a move on power. Keep it clean, boys. We've already seen a few front wings and rear wings lost by half-hearted moves into the second to last corner, but luckily they still continue to fight another day. Power and Whincup up to 5th and 6th now as a result of Riquelme pitting. Here's Fornarelli trying a move up the inside of Fenestras. That's not worked. That's allowed Albuquerque onto the back of him. Here's a recovering Leclerc, who's having a little bit of an issue on tyre warm-up there, but still carries on. Carthagena has now pitted, so that will promote some of the people at the back end of the field. Buemi is being told to box now, so race leader Buemi, almost 6.5 seconds ahead of Wickens. We've seen him coming into the pit lane shortly. Here he is, so Buemi pits from the lead, Nazar under pressure from Foucault still. Rosenqvist carries on, Wickens carries on. And this is Lundgaard with an issue. Lundgaard coming to a slow. Now what's happened here? Transmission issues have plagued most drivers this weekend. Is it another transmission failure? So Lundgaard comes to a halt. And it is indeed a transmission failure, as a lot of drivers now pit. With 18 laps completed, here is Robert Wickens, our now new race leader, or has retaken race lead as a result of Buemi pitting. And what does this allow for Rosenqvist? Rosenqvist 3.5 seconds off the back. Buemi down in 11th. He's got a little bit of breathing space between himself and Antonio Felix da Costa. Marcello promoted to 3rd, he's going a little bit longer as well into the stint. Again, not miles away from Rosenqvist, he's only 1.1 seconds off the back of him now. And Verone's with an engine failure, and there he is at the bottom of the waterfall, so he's failed, and the same old reliability issues that we saw in the sprint race are now starting to creep into this longer feature race. It's just taken a little bit longer to happen. Wickens, when will we expect to see Wickens in? We expect to see Rosenqvist going a bit longer. based on his current pace. With Marcello now closing his Buemi, trying to make his way through onto Costa, and does so fairly easily, but he does find a slower Magnussen ahead. Now he's going to go up the inside of Magnussen as well. And that's a move we haven't seen that often into the final corner, but such is the pace advantage on those fresher tyres, absolutely scything his way through the field. But is this traffic costing him too much time? Here's his teammate Marcello, still catching up onto the back of Rosenqvist. Buemi's managed to get his way up into 6th position, and it is quite a gap now until he reaches the back of Power and Whincup. So he's got plenty of free air to use the best of his tyres. Meanwhile, Rosenqvist actually catching up onto the back of some back markers now. I think I saw one of the Team India cars just up ahead. He's going to hope that he pits sometime soon. The team may have to switch up the strategy because Rosenqvist doesn't want to spend too much time behind any back markers, as he's now got Marcello almost over the back of him, and it's nearly 3 abreast into the Sachs curve there. That is what looks to be, I think, yeah, that is Hinchcliffe. Van der Linde here, Sheldon Van der Linde, going up the inside of Hinchcliffe there. He's now got his brother to deal with Hinchcliffe now. Here's Wickens, and is Wickens slowing? Wickens almost being unlapped there from Raghunathan. In the background, it still looks as though Marcello is closing on Rosenqvist. Rosenqvist pits now, so Rosenqvist pits from 2nd position, which promotes Raffaele Marcello into that 2nd place. Will Power has also pitted. That's going to allow Buemi through, and does so indeed. Fuoco again trying to get through on Felipe Nasser, but not quite doing so. Actually, that's Bruno Senna that he's trying to get through there. Wickens definitely not happy with Raghunathan trying to unlap himself, and again Raghunathan trying to go for a move on our race leader at the moment. So where did Rosenqvist? Rosenqvist actually came out behind Stefan Riquelme. So Riquelme, by pitting early, has put himself ahead of Rosenqvist, but obviously Rosenqvist with a bit of a tyre advantage as Wickens comes into pit. Leclerc trying to get through on Fornarelli. He's got O'Ward for company as well. O'Ward has dropped down to 10th position now, as the 3 all come up behind Fornarelli. Leclerc trying to go through, doesn't quite manage to go through. You have to be 100% committed, pretty much side by side, or if not slightly ahead into the corner in order to make that move work. It didn't quite work there for Leclerc, but he's going to have another go here into turn 1 if he's close enough, as Albuquerque now pits. So Buemi retakes the lead. Marcello's now pitted as well. He's came out in 6th position behind Will Power, splitting the 2 Team Australia cars. Here's Fenestraz now on Noreen Karthikeyan. So that is a position made up, but sadly for him, still a way away from the points, as Leclerc again trying to get through on Fornarelli, and once again the move that he's been trying to pull off pretty much all weekend still doesn't work. Riquelme has managed to actually leapfrog Wickens here. So Wickens, by being stuck behind or being pestered by Ragunathan, has now lost out to Raquelme. Now, this circuit, although has got 2 obvious passing places, you do have to have quite a pace deficit over your opponent. So it's somewhat like Monaco. So as long as Raquelme stays pretty clean in his driving, he can still stay ahead of Wickens. Wickens obviously with the tyre advantage over Raquelme, because Raquelme did pit a few laps earlier. And here is Wickens all over the back end of Raquelme, and he is very, very close. He's closed the gap so quickly, and he's surely going to be through here. Goes up the inside, but Raquelme says no. So Wickens going to have a rethink there. He's going to have another go down the start-finish straight. He looks to have had a good exit out of the final corner. Here's Will Power under pressure from Raffaele Marcello, but he's not quite close enough. And in the meantime, Raquelme still ahead of Wickens. Wickens with a slight lock-up there. That's allowed Rosenqvist to join the party for this battle for second position. All the while, Buemi 13 seconds up the road. But as long as Raquelme basically stays in this position on his older tyres, he's going to continue to back up the field as Wickens tries to pull off another move, but again, not succeeding, and that's allowed Rosenqvist all over the back of him now. Will Powers also catching up onto the back of him. So here is Rosenqvist trying to go up the inside of Wickens, and that looked pretty successful to me, and it is successful. So Rosenqvist up into third position ahead of Wickens. Wickens is not going to be happy with that. So Rosenqvist, as it stands, and actually Wickens now loses out to Power. So what is going on with Wickens? Onward and upwards, the team says to Power. Seems like Team Australia having a much better showing here today, with their car currently in 4th and 7th position for Whincup, but it seems like Whincup's still got a fair amount of pace with him as well. Wickens just needs to have a bit of a regroup. He's shown that he's got the pace. He's led this race. But here is Buemi, and we go back to Fornarelli, who is under pressure from O'Ward. O'Ward's managed to get his way up into 9th position now. He's got Sheldon van der Linde snapping at his heels, and a whole train of cars behind that. That's Leclerc, Calvin van der Linde, Hinchcliffe, Magnussen, Da Costa. As van der Linde goes up the inside there, so has made up a position on Leclerc, so by Sheldon, and Rosenqvist is out! Rosenqvist is out! Felix Rosenqvist, who was set for a podium and retaking his championship lead, is out again. And he is quite understandably frustrated and livid with that. Vicar has let him down once again. The driver who has driven immaculately so far this season, which is why he's been leading the championship, and the car's let him down 2 races in a row. So here is Robert Wickens now trying to fight back at Power for what is now 3rd position. Raquelme, who we all know is going to end up with the slower car because he's gone much longer on these tyres. We also got Whincup and Marcello not too far down the road, as we see Calvin van der Linde having a go at brother Sheldon, and fails on that and causes a bit of a roadblock there. This is the battle for 20th position as Albuquerque is finding his way past Carthagena, but as we've seen all weekend so far, the Indian drivers, or the Indian cars, not being the easiest cars to get past, it seems, although they are the slowest on course, and that is Will Power in third position on the back end of Riquelme, trying to get through on Riquelme. So who is going to be passed? It is pretty much a pass will be pass situation here as Power goes up the inside of Riquelme and he takes that position. He's pushed Riquelme out wide, but not wide enough to allow Wickens through. But in turn, this has now allowed Whincup and Marcello onto the back end of this fight for third position. So passes going on in the background there. That looked like Whincup, and it was Whincup going through on Wickens. So Wickens now demoted yet another position. But here is Buemi, who has got to hope and pray to his lucky stars that that car holds up together, and also that he holds his focus, because this has been a dominant performance so far from the Swiss driver. And Whincup having a look now at Riquelme. Whincup really trying to get through on the Monegasque driver because he can see his teammate sprinting off into the distance. And that's a huge gap already, so Whincup up the inside. This is surely going to be a move forward position, and Marcello also goes up the inside, is that of Wickens, but that doesn't quite work that time round. But Whincup has now been released into third position. So Power setting about closing the mammoth gap down to Buemi. It's going to be more a case of just keeping the pressure going and keeping the pace going so that his teammate Whincup doesn't have enough of a sniff to get through on that second position, because it is still, or it's currently, Australia second and third. Marcello in the meantime has also got through on Wickens, so he has now got the very slow Riquelme to deal with now. What looked like a masterstroke from the Monaco team has not been such a masterstroke now, because it seems that Riquelme is struggling too much with his tyres. He could have probably gotten away with going a couple laps longer into his stint, but it was a gamble and it looked as though it paid off to start off with, but not quite the case at the moment. But he still sits in P4. Still the recovering Albuquerque, who has not had the best of weekends, getting himself into quite a bit of hot water in the sprint race with a couple of incidents that led to penalties which cost him points. Again, finding himself with issues now, having to scrap at the back end of the field. But here is Jamie Whincup, who's really made up quite the gap to Stefan Riquelme. He's still on his lonesome with Will Power a corner ahead pretty much. Marcello still not managing to get through on Riquelme, so this is costing Marcello dearly, because Marcello was one of the later drivers to pit, so he would have the best tyre offset in comparison. Here's Buemi now starting to catch up onto some of the back markers. And he's going to hope that they don't become an issue. This is Felipe Massa now under pressure from Fuoco and Villa Gomez. With one of the Team India cars to deal with. Marcello still trying to find a way through on Riquelme. This is still allowing Wickens all over the back of him now. And with every missed opportunity for Marcello, it looks to be another opportunity for Wickens, and Wickens is trying up the inside. Again, that's going to cost him time to Riquelme. But with each missed opportunity for Marcello is an opportunity gone before the podium, as both the Australians are going off up the road. He's now got 6 seconds now between Riquelme and Whincup. Such is the pace difference, and Ragunathan really not getting out the way there of Buemi. Buemi pretty much going half a lap until the Indian driver allowed him through. That's probably allowed power to close, and he has done indeed. He's managed to take 2 or 3 seconds out of Buemi, so Buemi's going to hope that he doesn't come across any more back markers like that in this race. Still looking in the background to Whincup, who's trying to close the gap to Power. Riquelme still ahead of Marcello, and Marcello's having another go up the inside of Riquelme. Here's Ragunathan completely locked up there into turn 1. First driver to be lapped in this race. Felipe Albuquerque further up the road battling with Karthikeyan. And it seems, although we would all expect to see Albuquerque through on Karthikeyan, doesn't look to be the case. It's still the same as it was in the sprint race, with drivers who would expect to see going through on the Team India car, and Team India putting up a brilliant defence, albeit not scoring any points. But it's for pride. As we look to Willpower, who's again managed to close on Buemi. It's now down to 12 seconds as Marcello has another look, but again in the wrong place at Riquelme. It seems that both Marcello and Wickens have got far more pace over Riquelme, and Wickens tries to go through on Marcello, and I thought based on that onboard shot that he was through, but still not quite, and that's cost him more time to Riquelme. Well over a second now is the gap between Riquelme and Marcello, so that's going to take him another lap or so. Meanwhile, Nazar still under pressure here. I think that is Fuoco with the time penalty still to deal with later. Not that it matters for the time being, because he's got nowhere near the top 15, so he won't be scoring points as it stands. The team still giving hope to Power that Buemi has got more lap cars to deal with the closing stages of the race to come, as we can see what looks to be a couple cars ahead. I think this is going to be Albuquerque versus Karthikeyan most likely, and indeed it is, so this is going to be a little bit more difficult to deal with a handful of laps left to go. How much more time is Buemi going to hemorrhage to Power trying to lap these two? Meanwhile, further back for P18, this is Fenestrans trying to get through on Villagomez for 18th position. Whincup looks to be, the gap is staying pretty much the same at about 3 seconds, or just under 3 seconds between Power and Whincup. Riquelme still holding on to that 4th place ahead of Marcello. Marcello must be getting frustrated now. We've seen Marcello pull off some amazing overtaking moves during his GT career. Can he pull one of those off on Riquelme? It hasn't looked like the case so far. I think the team saying it was supposed to be for power, but I believe that was actually a team radio for the two South Africans here of Sheldon and Kelvin van der Linde in 9th and 10th, because if they battle too much, there's a whole train of cars ready to swallow them up. And this is Buemi now catching up onto the back of Albuquerque and Kavaney, so definitely losing time. We can already see he's losing time. He's lost a second already to power. This is Magnussen going through on Antonio Felix da Costa. That is for 12th position, and it's Arthur Leclerc just a little bit further up the road. Riquelme still holds on to that 4th position. There is the two van der Linde brothers getting very, very close. It's usually rule number 1, don't take out your teammate, but also don't take out your brother. And that has allowed Leclerc to have a sniff up the inside. That's Buemi through on the pair of them now, so that's the lapped cars dealt with there. The gap as a result of that has come down to just under, well, it's actually now down to 9.3 seconds, so he's lost a load of time trying to catch and pass these two back markers there. But still, with just over 9 seconds between Buemi and power, there's not too many back markers, hopefully, for the Swiss driver to deal with. With 39 laps completed and a total of 42 on the board, we are coming into the final 3 laps of this race, and providing any issues for Buemi, it looks like job done. But we've already seen in Valencia, Buemi has retired with only a few laps left to go, and this is Kelvin van der Linde under pressure now from Arthur Leclerc. Still holds on to that 10th position. Fuoco, who's been trying pretty much all race to get through on Felipe Nasser, bearing in mind Fuoco has got a time penalty over his head. Wink up now, still trying to close in on power. Riquelme still holding on to that 4th position ahead of Marcello. Marcello is running out of laps here. So across the line, Buemi still stabilising the gap to 9.4 seconds to Will Power. In the meantime, Winkup's actually closed a little on power, but still not quite enough as we have 2 laps remaining. And Villagomez has lost the gearbox, so retirement here for the Mexican. Another gearbox gone this weekend. This is a circuit. Not sure if it's been particularly bumpy, but something that's been causing the gearboxes to fail. Back at the front, here's Albuquerque once again trying to get through on Kavaney, and this has now allowed Ragunathan onto the back of him. Here's Marcello, still nowhere near close enough to make a move on Stefan Riquelme, so it looks like Riquelme has actually pulled a masterstroke here. And it's actually Ragunathan coming through and passes Albuquerque, so Albuquerque spent pretty much most of this second half of the race trying to pass Kavaney, has failed to do so, and with the first opportunity that Ragunathan gets, he comes straight through on the Portuguese driver. But here it is, Sebastian Buemi coming around in his final lap. 10 seconds now to Will Power. Barring any major incidents, Comes down the waterfall for one final time. The Steck comes through the second to last corner. Now the final corner awaits. And it looks like, for the first time this season, Sebastian Buemi crosses the line and wins here at Sachsenring. A fantastic result. Power finishes second, with Whincup third. And that is a brilliant showing there from Team Australia, who have struggled a bit in the early parts of the season. Riquelme holds on to that fourth place ahead of Marcello. And again, brilliant second half from Riquelme, managing to hold on to those tyres and hold on to his nerve against a fast-charging Marcello. O'Ward doesn't manage to keep hold of his championship lead that he briefly had. Coming through Hinchcliffe, here's Bruno Senna to take the final points paying position, with Felipe Nasser just behind. Fuoco finishes with Fenestraz being the final driver across the line. So here's the confirmation. Sebastian Buemi wins at Sachsenring with Willpower in second, Jamie Whincup third, Stefan Riquelme fourth, Raffaele Marcello fifth, Wickens finishes sixth with Fornarelli in seventh, so a decent showing there for the Italian, Pato O'Ward in eighth, Sheldon van der Linde and Kelvin van der Linde in 9th and 10th, Arthur Leclerc in 11th with Kevin Magnussen in 12th and Antonio Felix da Costa in 13th. Bruno Senna and Nasser round out the points paying positions in 14th and 15th, Fenestraz in 16th, Karthikeyan and Raghunathan in 17th and 18th, and we see Albuquerque finishing a lap down with Hinchcliffe having a penalty, Fuoco also with a penalty, Vinna Gomez, Rosenquist and Verone retiring along with Lundgaard and Ericsson with the puncture. And after what has been a pretty dramatic race, we go back to Chris.
And finally, there you have it. Sebastian Buemi actually survives a race in a winning position and actually wins the race. Congratulations to you, mate. You deserve that. But there is something that I do need to add. Because of what Antonio Fuoco did, he now has a race ban that he needs to serve at Monaco. So he cannot race there. It is such a shame, but rules are rules. So what does all that do for the driver standings for Division 2? Well, we can see that Pato O'Ward is now back on top of the driver standings, just 10 points ahead of Felix Rosenquist, 77 points for him, 67 for Felix. Then we have Robert Wickens behind them on 57, we have Sebastian Buemi with that great win now at 53, Jamie Whincup just behind him on 51, Raffaele Marcello on 41, Kevin Magnussen also on 41, very close there, with Felipe Albuquerque as well on 40, Will Power on 39, Antonio Felix da Costa also 39, Stefan Riquelme 30. These are all very, very close. Stefan Riquelme on 38, Fenestraz and Felipe Nasser on 37 points, Arthur Leclerc on 35. A big gaggle of cars, all so close together. That's fantastic. And then we have Marcus Ericsson on 28 with the great victory today in the sprint. Christian Lundgaard on 27th, Leonardo Fornarelli on 26 points, and then we have Kelvin van der Linde on 25, James Hinchcliffe at 18, Sheldon van der Linde at 10, Nico Ferroni on 9, Bruno Senna also on 9, Antonio Fuoco with a disappointing weekend on 8, and will not be able to get any points in Monaco. And then you got the three, Mahavir Raghunathan, Rafael Gomez and Narain Karthikeyan on 0. Now we can see what that does to the nation standings. Sweden are amazingly just 1 point ahead after round 4 on 95, Switzerland on 94, Australia only 5 behind with 90. Then we have Portugal in 4th place with 79 points, Mexico with 77, Canada with 75, Monaco with 73, Denmark on 68 points. Then we have Argentina in 9th with 46, Brazil as well on 46. We have South Africa 11th with 35 points, Italy with 34, and India on zilch. But now that Division 2 is over, we have Division 1 left now, the feature race of the Sachsenring round 4, and Simon Pagenaud is on pole for that. His compatriot was in 2nd place, but because of his penalty he has to go down a few slots, and that promotes René Rast into second place with Andre Lotterer in third, so this is a good place for Germany to start this race. We have Daniel Ricciardo in fourth, Philip Hansen in fifth, Stoffel Vandoorne in sixth place. What a very good qualifying he had. Sandy Stuvix had a great weekend so far, but he's in seventh, Max Hart in eighth, Alex Dunn in ninth, Joseph Newgarden now in 10th, Dries Van Toorn in 11th, Sebastian Bourdais now with his penalty being served is in 12th. James Collado also had a penalty as well, so he shuffles a few places down into 13th, Alex Palou in 14th, Naoki Yamamoto in 15th, Carl Larson in 16th place, with now the two Kiwi cars of Shane Van Gisbergen and Scott Dixon 17th and 18th. Hopefully they can get something good out of here. And we have Kamui Kobayashi in 19th, Bob Frans in 20th, Paul de Resta in 21st, Nick de Vries in 22nd. There's a bit of a sad qualifying for the Netherlands there. And we have Elfyn Evans in 23rd, Jack Aitken in 24th. We have Nathan Italy Watanavaragul in 25th and Ella Lloyd in 26th. Now, let's bring this final race of the Sachsenring. Ryan, it is back to you.
And we are back again for the final race of the weekend. It is the Div 1 feature race. The lights are about to come on, and once they go out, who is going to be leading into turn 1? It's lights out, and away we go. And Pagenaud gets away well, but it looks like a brilliant start from Rast. Rast goes up the inside into turn 1, and that looks to be Juncker Dea going up into third, but Hansen's now snatched that away. As they shuffle their way through, Stuvix managed to come through in fourth as well. Lotterer has had a terrible start, going from third down to sixth. But here is Rast going up the hill, trying to chase down Pagenaud, who got a pretty good start in the end there, with Hansen in third position. Juncker Dea, who almost managed to get up into third position, has now found himself down in fifth position. But it looks to be a fairly clean getaway, unlike some of the races we've had today. Here's Stuvik having a look up the inside of Hansen to take that third position, and he does so. And there's contact there! So Lotterer has gone into the back of Juncker Dea. Down the hill, Lotterer having a look up the inside, and don't really know how to call that really, because it seemed like Juncker Dea, or no, Lotterer was up the inside there, but Juncker Dea decided to close the door when he was stood there. But here's Alex Dunn on his teammate Hart, so up the inside is Dunn on Hart, sixth position. So it's been a 30-second time penalty for Andre Lotterer and a 10-place grid drop for next race. We'll have to keep an eye on the points at the moment in the penalty point system, because I think Lotterer's already had a few infringements, so he's going to have to be quite careful there. But meanwhile, it's still Pagenaud sprinting away from Rast, nearly a second between the pair of them now, but Stuvik, who's taken that third position from Hansen, isn't managing to get away, and Hansen's in the slipstream now. Is he going to have a move? He's having a look up the inside this time round, but Stuvik shuts the door. Here is Stoffel Vandoorne in 10th position. There's Pagenaud on the first flying lap, sets the fastest lap, as we'd probably expect with the pace that he's got. He's now got a lead of 1.1 seconds. So Joseph Newgarden stuck in between the two Belgium cars. There's Simon Pagenaud, a driver who many probably wouldn't have thought would find himself in this position at the moment. Obviously having recovered from his injuries and the concussion that he received in mid-Ohio, I think it was, going back a year or two ago. Many thought that that was pretty much career over and he was done and dusted, but he seems to be showing today that isn't the case. Here is Philip Hansen, who's dropped off the back now of Stuvik and has now got Lotterer up the inside. Obviously Lotterer not really having much more getting in the way at the moment with that 30-second penalty is Dunn's going up the inside of Lotterer now into turn 1 and does make that stick, and Hart also has a look at Lotterer but thinks better of it. Here is Stuvik, who has been showing race on race to have the pace, obviously having the sprint race victory earlier. We're being reliably informed that that is actually team manager Jake Sandson's first ever form of victory in the Grand Prix World Series across all categories. Here's Newgarden. Newgarden's lost the front wing. I saw a confetti of carbon fibre going in the rear view mirror there, and it is definitely front wing damage there for Newgarden, so he's going to have to limp his way back to pit lane. Luckily, he's done it in the final sector, so he hasn't got too far to go, but this is probably going to have to turn his race into a two-strop strategy now. The other one to look out for is Sebastian Bourdais. Obviously, was due to be on the front row for this race, but due to the penalty that he received in the sprint race has found him further down the field. Pagenaud having a few moments there at the top of the hill. Was trying to extend that advantage, lost a little bit of time to rest as a result of that slight mistake, but still 1.8 seconds is the lead for Simon Pagenaud. But here is Team Germany's René Rast in second position, and a much better showing here from Germany as we see Dries van Thor under pressure there from Max Hart, and Hart almost getting through there but not quite. He's going to have another look into the final corner. They're side by side, but just cut away there, and by the graphic nothing's changed there, but he's going to have another look into the final corner. And actually, by putting himself at a disadvantage onto the start-finish straight, has come under fire from Van Dorn and Poe. So, position lost there for Hart. Pagenaud still extending that advantage in the early stages of the race, potentially running a lower fuel load, and that's Robin Freins off. So what has happened there? He looks to have, we've already caught him going off there, saying it's a puncture. He's also lost his front wing, and the car grinds to a halt at the bottom of the Omega curve. So first retirement. And still Simon Pagenaud extending his lead as he comes to complete 6 laps. This is Evans in the Team Wales car under attack from Team Scotland of Jack Aitken. This is for 19th and 20th position. But as I was saying earlier, Team Germany not having the greatest of starts to this Nations Cup series, struggling quite a lot in the first few rounds, but as a result of this upgrade window and the setup choices as well along the way, it seems Topher Smith has gone very much on the side of high downforce and upgrading the downforce rather than the power, and with this circuit being very, very downforce dependent, along with Monaco up next, it's looking good for Team Germany. Elvin Evans still holding on to that 19th position. Dunn going very wide on the exit of the Sachs curve. Dunn being reminded that Lotterer has a penalty, so although he is being pressured by Lotterer's got a lot of work to do if he wants to actually gain any positions in this race with that 30-second penalty over his head. Here's Nick de Vries under pressure from Lee Watanabe. And this is the battle for 21st position, somewhere you wouldn't really expect to see de Vries. A multiple champion in his own right. Here is Sebastian Bourdais, who's going to be trying as hard as possible to work his way through the field. Sort of stalled out here in 12th position. He's got James Collado all over the back of him. And that's a move in the background, actually. So through is Yamamoto on Collado. Yamamoto trying to make up after the failures in the sprint race. Is looking back, and Yamamoto going through on Bourdais there, so Yamamoto not wasting any time trying to get through this field. Here is Stuvik still under pressure from Hansen. Hansen again making the mistake of trying to get through on that fast left-hander, and that's cost him dearly. In the background you can see Alex Dunn trying to close in on this battle for 3rd position. Meanwhile, Ella Lloyd sitting in 17th position. Pretty much on her own, got DeResta 1.2 seconds behind. And actually, straight off the road is Lloyd. And cutting straight across the road into pit lane there. Obviously losing the front wing by going off into the gravel. Still, this is René Rast. Running a very lonely race at the moment. 3.6 seconds behind Pagenaud. As it is Dries van Thor under pressure from teammate Stoffel van Dorn. This refreshed Belgium lineup, definitely a much stronger pairing than it has been earlier on this season. And that is Aitken just trying to psych out Evans there. Evans running wide as a result of it, but still Aitken unable to capitalise on that situation there. As we go back to Stuvik and his Stoffel van Dorn having a few issues, still trying to catch up onto the back of Dries van Thor. We have that gaggle of cars behind, and Lee Watanabe has gone out with a gearbox failure, so yet another gearbox failure this weekend. So, off she goes, and it is an early bath and on the plane pretty much to Monaco. Oh, and that's Stuvik out! Now what has happened to Stuvik here? From the looks of things, I'm assuming it's either a puncture or it looks like a suspension failure there for Stuvik, so both Thailand cars out on the same lap. So that allows Philip Hansen back into 3rd position. Has freed him up, and it definitely looked like he had a little bit more pace over Stuvik, but the problem is with the Sachsenring circuit, as we see Palou trying to make a move on Hart, you pretty much need to be almost half a second faster than the car ahead in order to make a move. So here is Palou, 9th position, has managed to make up a few places, obviously some of that down to the fact that other drivers have fallen by the wayside already. But looking back at Shane van Gisbergen rounding out the top 10, has got Yamamoto all over the back of him. He's going to have a look down the inside as Yamamoto, but thinks better of it. Now Yamamoto's going to have to be careful here because he's got Bourdais over the back of him as well, and Bourdais may have a look into this final corner. No, he thinks better of it. As Bourdais has also got Collado all over the back of him as well. Here is Hansen already starting to push on, and that's Ella Lloyd making mistakes again out of the second to last corner. Still just about holds it together though. And if Lloyd had stayed on the track, there was a chance that she'd be in for a shout to score the final point because she wasn't too far away from Larson. But if buts and maybes, this is Stoffel Van Dorn, who's still unable to find a way through on Van Thor. Obviously no team orders at the moment. But as to be expected, Stoffel on the radio telling the team he wants them to swap positions. Back at Rast, who's now fallen 4.6 seconds behind Pagenaud. I can only imagine Pagenaud is running a lighter fuel load in these early stages of this race. And who's that pulling off? It's Dixon! So Dixon's having an issue there and is grounding to a halt. What has happened here? It definitely sounded like the car was slowly dying, so is this another transmission failure? We'll wait for confirmation to come up. So Dixon out of the race, and it is indeed another transmission failure. So another retirement, that promotes Paul di Resta into the points. Larson in 14th now. Here is Collado all over the back of Bourdais. Bourdais still stuck in that 12th position. Here's Hansen. And is actually not closing in on Rast like we thought we would. He's actually falling away from Rast. But to be complete lap 15, the pit window is going to be opening sometime soon, and that looks like a move there. That's Palou through on Hart. So Alex Palou up into 8th position, and now he's going to chase after the two Belgian drivers ahead. But here is Rast. Still just about within 5 seconds of Simon Pagenaud. Make that actually just over 5 seconds from Simon Pagenaud as we go through into the second sector. Hansen just over 5 seconds off the back of Rast. But Dunn and Lotter are very much close to each other still. Obviously Lotterer with that time penalty. And speaking of which, Lotterer trying to go up the inside of Dern. Doesn't manage to do so, but obviously Dunn, knowing Lotterer has this time penalty, you kind of don't want him to be getting tangled up with each other. Aitken now having a look up the inside of Evans, still not managing to get through on Evans though. He's been trying that pretty much all race. So here is Aitken, one of the first drivers to pit. So that will give Evans some fresh air, but hopefully Aitken can fire those tyres up and leapfrog Evans on the undercut. But here is Juncker, who is under pressure now from Newgarden. So what has happened to, unless Juncker pitted without me realising, which is potentially the point there, Newgarden all over the back of the Spaniard. Here's Bourdais pressing up the inside of Yamamoto, but not managing to make it stick. Yamamoto hangs it out around the outside. So Hart, Van Gisbergen, Bourdais have all pitted. Team happy with the strategy there with Pagenaud. So Juncker and Newgarden being promoted up the order. Here is Rast. Still falling behind Pagenaud. Actually, Hansen has managed to catch a little bit this time round on Rast. And here's the Lotterer again. So Lotterer has pitted. Hansen's now pitted as well from third position. But Pagenaud and Rast carry on. That promotes Dunn up into third. Dresta has also pitted, so he's going to fall out of the points. Here is Van Dorn having a look up the inside of Van Thor again, but again choosing the wrong opportunity, and that's put Palou all over the back of him now. Alex Dunn in third position. And here is Palou going up the inside of Van Dorn, but unsuccessful this time around. Gonna have to be a little bit closer to make that move. But Dunn, Palou, Collado, Van Dorn and Larson have now all pitted. That's brought Hansen through. Rast is going to be pitting at the end of this lap. Van Thor now runs in third, so obviously he's going a little bit longer. Van Gisbergen get it all locked up behind the rejoining Van Dorn. But Palou has come out behind Van Gisbergen. So Rast has just pitted. Pagenaud carries on, so my predictions of Pagenaud running a little bit light on fuel are incorrect. He's running a bit heavier this time around, so he's going to be, in theory, even quicker come his second stint. Yamamoto pits from 4th position. This promotes Dreesen Thor into 2nd position, although he is 21 seconds behind the leader. Essentially, Pagenaud could pretty much pit now and still come out not losing a position. Here's Van Dorn going up the inside of Max Hart, so he's taken 8th position now. He's got Junkerdare and Lotterer just up ahead. Pagenaud comes back past again to tick off one more lap. That's 21 laps completed. So we're at the halfway stage now. Here's Pelot having a look at the back of Van Gisbergen, but again not going to get through there, and that's put Bourdais all over the back of him now, so he's going to have a good run down to the waterfall. Is going to be a path for position through into the Sachs curve. Van Thor has now pitted from 2nd position. That's promoted Ras back into 2nd and Hansen into 3rd. And Junkerdare is pitted again, so another pit stop for the Spaniard. I didn't quite catch what happened there. But Pagenaud has a 28-second advantage. But the problem that he's going to have, where Rast has pitted and is on fresher tyres, he's in theory going to start catching up onto Pagenaud, so he doesn't want to leave it too long and risk being undercut by Rast because he's left it so long. He's stayed out a good few laps longer already. We're past half race distance. Here's Bourdais under pressure from James Collado, but at the same time trying to get through on Pelot. So Pagenaud being told to box this lap, and it's going to be fairly close between himself and Rast on pit exit. Rast has managed to close the gap down to 27 seconds. So into the pits comes Pagenaud. Now where is he going to filter out in comparison to Rast? We're looking at Hansen at the moment. He's just coming down the waterfall. Here's Rast. He was just going through the Sachs curve and coming up to the final corner. So Pagenaud exits the pit lane. Now how has he fared compared to Rast? The gap showing at 5.4 seconds. That may change as we go through the end of the first sector. Rast with warmer tyres as well, so this is a move as we look. Evans still ahead there of Jack Aitken, so Aitken, who pitted before Evans, still hasn't managed to get through. And the gap is definitely down between Pagenaud and Rast. It's below a second. So Pagenaud is going to have to get those tyres fired up as soon as possible, and he looks to be doing so as he's extending the gap. He's just over a second now, 1.3 seconds, as we come through to completed the second sector, and over the line I expect it to be even further, the gap there. So over the line we go. Yep, business as usual for Pagenaud, 1.7 seconds. Germany almost playing a blinder of a strategy call. Came so close, I think another lap, and Rast would be ahead of Pagenaud. But here's Aitken still trying to make his way through on Evans. And in turn, I think that is one of the Netherlands cars now. I think Ferris is out of this race. So that's Nick de Vries there. Pagenaud having a bit of a hairy moment down the waterfall there. Not something we want to be doing, as there is no runoff there. It is just straight up gravel. But Pagenaud continuing to extend that advantage. Now at 2.5 seconds, obviously that mistake in the final corner has allowed Ras to, well, he would have probably closed during that sector as it stayed at 2.5 seconds. But here is Pelot that we were looking at, who's chasing down Van Gisbergen. This is Yamamoto, who's been having a fairly solid race so far. He's battling with Larson, who's in 13th place at the moment. Larson, who I think is yet to stop at the moment. And that's Ella Lloyd. So Ella Lloyd obviously not having the best of races already with that trip into the gravel and losing the front wing. Grinds to a halt, and yet another transmission failure this weekend, and that's Pagenaud off! Simon Pagenaud goes out from the lead. Now what has happened here? The car's just failed. Is it another transmission failure? Whatever it is, that has gifted the lead to René Rast. Simon Pagenaud definitely distraught with that. And it is another transmission failure here in Sachsenring. This has been a complete car killer, particularly transmission killer, this weekend. Here's Nick de Vries having a look up the inside of Jack Aitken. He thought he made the move stick, but Aitken just managed to hang around the outside there. So with that retirement, that's promoted Evans into 15th. So Team Wales on for a point here at the moment. And after all that, that's also promoted Alex Dunn into 3rd position. Carl Larson getting it all wrong through the middle sector. That nearly allowed Yamamoto through. But I think Yamamoto completely caught off guard by that. He's wasn't quite in the right gear, and he's also lost a bit of time. So this is now the battle for the top 10 paying positions. We have Pelot followed by Bourdais and James Collado in 11th. Collado looking like he has a little more pace than the two ahead. Obviously we're expecting to see Bourdais with a little bit more pace here, obviously setting that front row qualifying time, but the thing about this circuit is, although they are running a higher downforce setup for Team France, being in the clear air means that you're able to run those faster lap times, but once you're stuck up behind someone with the higher downforce, the main places to pass are usually the straight lines that require the power, and that is not what Team France has at the moment. So here is a fairly lonely Alex Dunn. Lotterer in the background, obviously he hasn't got to worry too much about him. We have Stoffel van Dorn, who's essentially in a net 4th position. So potentially another potential good points for Van Dorn in his debut weekend here in the Grand Prix World Series or Nations Cup. Obviously he's somewhat of a stalwart in the Grand Prix World Series, but he's probably going to be frustrated with the result from earlier and definitely wants to make amends like a lot of drivers in this paddock. But with 29 laps completed, there's still a fair amount left of this Grand Prix to go. And still plenty more transmissions to potentially fail in the remainder of this race. Alex Palou still in 9th position ahead of Bourdais. He's caught up onto the back of Van Gisbergen now. So it's now a train from 8th down to 11th. This is Joseph Newgarden. I believe he must have had another pit stop as well, because he's still behind Juncker, and Juncker pitted for a second time, I believe. It's hard to believe that he would have dropped that far down the field, considering at one point Juncker was briefly into the top 3. Alex Dunn telling the team that the car feels great at the moment. Hopefully that isn't... he hasn't managed to curse himself. Here is Sebastian Bourdais under pressure from James Calado, and Calado goes through. So that's 10th position for James Calado. He's now going to go about trying to pass Alex Palou, who in turn is trying to find a way through on Van Gisbergen. Up the hill once again and back down these swooping corners. A car killer and a tyre killer. Lotterer under pressure now from the 2 Belgium cars. So here is Van Dorn going up the inside and does take that position. So he's no longer a net 4th position, he is 4th position now, is Stoffel Van Dorn. And hopefully his teammate Van Thor will follow suit. He's coming up alongside into turn 1 now, and through on Lotterer goes Van Dorn. So it's the 2 Belgian cars running 4th and 5th. And this will be a great haul of points for the Belgian team. But back on board now with Alex Dunn, very much on his own there in 3rd position, but still this will be a solid result for Team Ireland. Hansen without an answer for Rast. Come over, 32 laps completed. So 10 laps remaining. And it is still Rast leading, so Calado now having a look at Alex Palou into the Sax curve, but not able to get through. That's going to allow Bourdais back onto the tail of the English driver. It is Rast in a commanding lead here. Only an incident could really cause any form of upset for Rast at the moment, because he has got everything in control. 7.6 seconds ahead of Hansen. is Van Gisbergen, the sole remaining New Zealand car. Oh, and there's contact there. Newgarden trying to go up the inside. Oh, I think that was Aitken, but fails to do so. And so he's got Kobayashi all for company now. Meanwhile, still out at the front. Rest. Not extending his advantage like he was earlier, he's just controlling the pace now. Just bringing the car home as a little lock up ahead. There, I think that was Aitken having a look up into turn 1. Both Aitken and Kobayashi through now on Newgarden, so I'm not sure quite what happened with Newgarden there. Further on back, this is Bourdais with Yamamoto and Larson, so Larson's managed to pick up the pace in this second half of the race, and he's having a look up the inside of Yamamoto now. Almost contact made there, by the looks of things, into the second to last corner. Let's hear the tyres squealing enough there from Hansen. Collado with issues there. Lock up into turn 1. That's allowing Bourdais to come back onto the rear end of him. Bourdais chasing a top 10 finish. He must be feeling frustrated because, based on the pace of what he did in qualifying and what his teammate has managed to do up until the transmission failure, he surely must be thinking that he should be leading this Grand Prix at the moment. And this is turning into the Aitken train, as he's got Kobayashi and Newgarden of company. Kobayashi having a look down the inside there, but that's definitely not going to work. Back with Dunn, who's got a 4-second advantage with Van Dorn. This is Younger Daya up the inside of De Vries, and that's job done there for 16th position. But still at the front, it's Rene Rast, 8 seconds. This second half of the race has been a brilliant stint so far from the German driver. Obviously, some will say he was gifted the lead, but he's so far looked after his German car, and it's looking like a potential win here on German soil. Oh, and there's smoke up ahead. And it's Van Gisbergen. Van Gisbergen is reporting smoke out the car, and he is indeed smoking. So Palou goes through, and you're going to have Collado and Bourdais catching up onto the back of him now. Bourdais having a look up the inside of Collado. Collado's been held up by the slow-moving New Zealander, but that's not allowed Bourdais through. And it looks like Van Gisbergen's just going to carry on at the moment. He's past the pit entry. And this being slowed up there as Bourdais has a look up the inside of Collado, but doesn't manage to get through. This is getting very tightly compact here. From 9th down to 11th position. Actually, Larson also joining into the pack on 12th. It is Hansen. Hansen, who had a good start to the season, as we still see Van Gisbergen slowly circulating round it. Oh! Collected there by Nick De Vries. So here we are coming down the hill. You can see the smoke just up ahead, and wow, De Vries, I think, travelling a bit too hard, bit too fast there. And it slams into Van Gisbergen. De Vries saying, well, he was retiring already anyway. He's not, but it looks things called any additional damage to the Team New Zealand car. De Vries may argue, well, he was dawdling on the racing line, and it is no further investigation, as we see Yamamoto now pressuring Bourdais into turn 1. Larson has now caught up onto the back of this group. Bourdais must have made a mistake somewhere, because Calada's managed to scamper off up the road, nearly 1.5 seconds to Bourdais now, and Calada's going to try and chase after Palou. Here is Alex Dunn, still 3rd position, which would be a mighty result for the Team Ireland. With Belgium 4th and 5th. But as it stands at the moment, as the ticker tape comes through, I believe Lotter is going to fall outside the top 15. Potentially promoting Nick de Vries into the final points paying position. Junkadea sits there at the moment. Evans running a fairly strong race as well. He will find himself promoted into 13th. But here's Ras, 39 laps completed of the 42. This here is Alex Palou. Alex Palou, who currently sits in 8th position, which is going to be a net 7th with Lotter's penalty. Kobayashi having a go at Aiken and forcing Aiken off there. And through goes Joseph Newgarden. Aiken definitely not happy with that there, but an opportunistic move there from Newgarden. Threaded his way through the pair of them. 10-second penalty there for Kobayashi. Here's Hart down in 7th position, which will eventually become 6th position with Lotter's penalty. So this is looking like a good haul of points here for Team Ireland, which will be finishing as it stands 3rd and 6th position. Two laps remain for the German driver. As he rounds the top end of the circuit, is just dropping down now the waterfall into the Sachs curve. One more corner to go and it will be last lap time. And Hansen with an electrical issue from 2nd position. He's going to have to pit on the final lap, and he does so. That's going to promote Alex Dunn. It may even put Van Dorn up a position. So Dunn go through into 2nd. There's Van Dorn. Are we going to see Van Thor come through? He does so, and Hansen drops down to 6th position. Terrible stuff here for the British driver. On the final lap, he's going to have an absolute stonker. But I cannot see him making any positions up there. He's going to finish 5th with Lotter's penalty. But rounding into the final sector comes Rennie Rast through the Sachs curve for the final time. Coming up to the final corner is, as we said, a rocky start for Team Germany. But on home soil, it is Rennie Rast who comes over the line to win the Division 1 feature race. And a brilliant victory it is as well. 18 seconds to Alex Dunn, who in turn also has a great finish there. I think Ireland's best finish of the season, that is. And Stoffel van Dorn, on his series debut, finishes third position with teammate Van Thor in fourth. Andre Lotter is fifth across the road, but that's going to be handed over to Hansen, with Max Hart going to be finishing in sixth. So great result there for Team Ireland. Bourdais takes the top 10. I think actually Yamamoto will also be promoted into 10th place there. Junkadea, the last across the line, in 15th position, with De Vries going to take the final points as a result of Lotterer's penalty, I believe. But here is the confirmation. Rennie Rast wins on home soil with Alex Dunn in second, Stoffel van Dorn in third, Dries van Thor in fourth, Philip Hansen down into fifth, Max Hart sixth, Alex Palou seventh, James Collado finally keeping it clean in 8th position with Sebastian Bourdais 9th, and Yamamoto in 10th. Carl Larsson finishes in 11th with Paul de Resta in 12th and Elvin Evans in 13th. A great result there for Team Wales. Danny Ukandea was 14th with Andre Lotterer actually finishing in 15th, so Nick de Vries just missing out there on a point there, with Joseph Newgarden 17th and Aitken 18th, Kobayashi 19th, and we then go to the retirements of Shane van Gisbergen, Simon Pagenaud, Ella Lloyd, Dixon Stuvik, Lee Washner-Avagu, and Robin Friends. And after what was a very chaotic and dramatic final race of the weekend, it is finally back to Chris.
What a fantastic result for Germany. So win on their home soil. Pretty good. Yes, like Ryan said, considering where they started the season and some of the shakiness they got, what a result for them, for sure. But from jubilation to a bit of sadness, Andre Lotterer cannot race now at Monaco because he has amassed enough points that he actually has to serve a race ban. So I believe his substitute that will be taking his place is Mick Schumacher for Monaco. But what does all this do for the driver standings for Division 1? We can now see that Philip Hansen's got a rather healthy lead. I say it's not really healthy with only 4 rounds in, but there's 21 points ahead of Scott Dixon, who's on 58 points. Alex Palou 53, Naoki Yamamoto on 52, Rennie Rast, because of his race wins, now up to 50 points, Carl Larsson on 46, Sebastian Bourdais on 44, Sandy Stuvik with the sprint win today puts himself into 41 points, Alex Dunn with a terrific result here on 39 points, Daniel Junkadea on 37, Simon Pagenaud on 35, Joseph Newgarden on 31, Shane van Gisbergen on 30 points. Then we have the 2 Scottish drivers of Jack Aitken and Paul de Resta both on 29 points, Nick de Vries on 27, Dries van Thor on 24 points, Andre Lotterer on 22 with Max Hart as well on 22, James Collado with 20, and Stoffel van Dorn with his first race in the Nations Cup now already gets 16 points. What a great drive for him today. And then we have Elford Evans and Ella Lloyd next with 12 and 6 points respectively, Telasuke Makino 5 points, and then Larry Tempordi with 3, Marcus is on 1, and then we have also Nathan Italy went to the Varigal on 1 point, and then Kamui Kobayashi is only returned with a bit of unlucky drive today on 0, Alex is also on 0, Vanina X on 0, and Robin Franz another unlucky drive today on 0. What does that do for the standings for the constructors, or nations rather, sorry? England is in the lead with 99 points, Spain only 9 behind on 19, New Zealand on 88, France on 79, USA with 77, Germany in 6th with 72 points, Ireland with 61 points, a good haul for them, Scotland on 58, Japan on 57, Thailand on 42, Belgium now got some good points haulage now up to 41, Netherlands at 30, and Wales sitting on the last on 18 points. Well, what a thrilling and quite a dramatic round 4 that we have had today. pretty epic, to be honest, with lots of interesting drama and some new winners, and yeah, Germany winning on home soil. That's fantastic. And now we head to the delights of Monaco at round 5. A certain team will be really wanting to get a win down there. Well, everyone does, but I think the team Monaco would love to try and win on home soil. They've gone down a specific design route where they would like to try and do that, but will that pull off? I have no idea. But yes, thank you so much for watching. I believe the Grand Prix World Series is returning in a week's time on this channel, and it will be at Poznan in Poland, round 10 or 11. I cannot remember off the top of my head, but either way, it's going to be a thriller. That one's going to be quite interesting series in itself. But we're going to be here same day, same time in a fortnight's time. And thank you so much for watching. I've been Chris Kavaney, your host. Ryan Ferris has been your commentator, and this is the Nations Cup signing off.